I'm Rosemary Donovan, Diocesan Advisor for Women's Ministry and Vicar at Christ Church, Epsom Common. I'm here today with our current curate, Esther Holly Hunt, and the first female priest at Christ Church, Canon Mavis Wilson. We're celebrating 30 years of ordained women's ministry in the Church of England. I discovered that Mavis was amongst the first cohort from Guildford Diocese in 1994, and Esther was ordained at Christ Church just in January this year. So it was quite a connection that we had with the parish, with the first and the last women priest to be ordained in Guildford Diocese. Ladies, as we look back over this last 30 years, what did it mean to you to be a priest in the Church of England? How did you feel when you were ordained?
I think it means for me to be doing what I feel God had always called me to be doing and being. So I think that just sense of completion and having arrived at the right place was there when I was ordained and remains there. And I was also felt extremely grateful to people who had supported me through all the arguments, and particularly in our diocese to Bishop Michael Adey, who had led the discussions about the legislation in General Synod. And Michael died very recently, so that's all quite in my mind. I really enjoy and value the huge privilege that it is.
Absolutely, it is a huge privilege. Guess you feel that as well, Esther.
Yeah, absolutely, it's a privilege. But I'd also say that at my ordination, it felt like an accumulation of so much anticipating and wondering and waiting. What am I doing with my life, and what am I called to do? And there at the cathedral for my deaconing, it was just this really special moment where I felt like this is the start of something, and it felt like all of these prayers had sort of come to this point and entering into a whole new adventure and journey with God, and I was really grateful for that.
I can relate to that. I certainly felt like a huge sense of fulfilment that this was what I've been building up to. That calling was really being validated in moment.
Yeah.
I think 30 years ago, when we were first ordained priests, there was an enormous sense just of relief because it had been so long. It had been 7 years since we'd been deaconed.
Yeah.
And so there'd been this long wait and lots of argument continuing. So I think really, I certainly just breathed a huge sigh of relief and thought, we've got here, really. Yeah, we've made it, absolutely, yes. Yeah.
And it was a very special occasion to have the first ordination at Christ Church itself. Was that a different feeling from being at the cathedral?
Yes, certainly. It was really special being ordained deacon at the cathedral with my fellow curates and being on that journey with them and feeling like you're part of something bigger. But at Christ Church, for my priesting, it did feel really intimate and really special having the whole congregation there and the prayers being said and the declarations and everything happening in that space where I'm carrying out my ministry. It was a really special time, and to have family there, I was really grateful for that opportunity.
The diocese have found a newspaper article that says that there was a special celebration in Epsom 30 years ago as well, which that you would have been part of. Do you remember much about that and what your role was?
Well, I remember the special celebration as being on the same day that I was ordained priest.
Okay, yes.
And in the evening we had a celebration to which I have to say a lot of people came, which was just so encouraging and exciting.
Yes.
And I was able to preside at the Eucharist for the first time, which was slightly scary, but really very meaningful.
Esther, when you were ordained, we celebrated that twin vocation of ministry and motherhood. We're all in awe of how do you manage to juggle everything together?
Taking a day at a time. I have to rely on God's grace and strength every day because they're both being a mum and a minister are all-consuming at times, and it's just knowing that God has brought me to this place to minister, and also God has given me the gift of Gabriel, and knowing that He has His hand on both, and just taking each day at a time, because I can tell you for the rest of this week I haven't got childcare planned. I do just sort of look at my diary because things change and move, and I am really grateful for a really supportive and loving family, so who can step in with childcare. But really it is just trusting that each week will play out, and that's how we juggle. But it's an absolute privilege to be both mum and minister.
I mean, this might be a more difficult question to answer, but what do you think that women bring to the priesthood that is perhaps different from our male colleagues?
Well, I'm not sure about that, because I think men and women have a range of qualities and characteristics which are all needed. So I wouldn't say motherhood, which I expect the cynic would say, because motherhood is about care and tenderness. Men can feel that just as much. Absolutely. So I'm not sure that there's any essential difference by being a woman, as apart from a man, except that women and men are doing something together, which is what should have happened anyway, a long time ago.
I think, yeah, for me, it's that sense of completion. Men and women bring different qualities, and we're better for having the more of that gender represented. Do you want to add anything to that?
Well, we've all been made in the image of God, and we all bring our different gifts, and mothers, not mothers, younger, older, you know, whether you're married or unmarried, we're all bringing who we are as individuals. And it creates a fuller picture of who we are as God's people. But each bringing our own different types of personalities and lived life experiences. So we can, all minister in different ways and have a bigger picture of ministry, both as men and women, and the diversity within being women as well.
Have either of you encountered any opposition to your ministry as women?
Well, a little bit. In the early days, people would occasionally either walk out when they realised that the president of the Eucharist was a woman, or would refuse to receive the sacrament. That subsided quite significantly, quite quickly. I remember a friend of mine who was a priest, and he was very bothered about the whole thing, and said, "Could I come and sit in the back when you're presiding, Mavis?" I said, "I wish you could come and sit anywhere you like. You'd be very welcome." And at the end of it, he said to me, "I can't imagine what I was fussing about," which was really encouraging. And I think for a lot of people, the experience was nothing as bad as they thought it would be.
Yes, I had a friend who supported me through my journey, but even though he didn't agree with the ordination of women, and then I invited him to preach at my first Eucharist, and afterwards he said something to me very similar, like, "Yeah, okay, I've changed my mind," which is really nice and encouraging. And I think over the years, things have changed for women. Certainly, I was the first female curate, the first female incumbent, and I'm really grateful that you've gone before me at Christchurch. And I guess for you, Esther, you feel that you are able to walk on the shoulders of these women who've gone before.
Absolutely. I'm really, really grateful to all the women who've gone ahead of me, because I'm not the first. Yes. And I've had the example of other women in church leadership ahead of me, to look to that and be encouraged and see representation in that way.
Yeah, it's a great encouragement to me now when I see other women coming forward that, you know, it's different to them, and I think that's really positive.
You're part of a tradition, Esther, now.
Yes. Yeah.
But one of the other things that I think is that the whole thing has been made even stronger by having women bishops. Yes. And I think that was a natural move forward as well, really.
What do you think has changed for women then over the last 30 years?
I think we've become normal.
Hallelujah. We're normal.
This is a ministry for men and women. That's how it is. That's how it appears to the wider world. So in a sense, it's normal, I think.
Would you agree?
As I hadn't experienced ministry 30 years ago, I think I'm just grateful that there does seem to be a more equal experience of ministry. I think I would say there's more equal opportunities. I think we'll see when I get to the end of my curacy, when it comes to me applying for jobs, hopefully there'll be no questions presented to me like Mavis experienced.
So what do you think you would like to see change in the next 30 years for women in the church?
I think there's still space for flexibility. There's a huge expectation of giving up absolutely everything in sacrifice for ministry. Of course, it's a huge calling, but you shouldn't have to sacrifice family life and relationships in order to fulfill God's call. So, being on demand 24/7 or having to pick up everything and move across country can be really unrealistic and put a real strain on family life. So, if there's ways going forward that actually could be more flexible in how women can be in ministry and still take care of their families and their relationships too.
Yeah, I think there's still a lot of work that could be done around people's expectations in ministry, and certainly pathways for training to be more flexible, women to be able to access that at different stages of life. And sometimes it's about the appointments process as well, about making sure that expectations of a parish are set up. Somebody's going to have a part-time role, maybe. So I think I'd perhaps like to see more flexibility in that. Certainly else that you'd perhaps like to see, Mavis?
No, I agree with the point about flexibility. I think the church is lagging slightly behind some other professions, and so we could learn about particular needing time off at particular times of life, maybe. So I think there are some things in that way that could be helpful.
Yeah, I've been having quite a few conversations with women surrounding the menopause as well.
Yes.
And Guildford has just introduced a menopause policy because that affects a lot of women and also their partners and male colleagues as well. We're just learning more about that phase in life for women in ministry too. I think that's important. And I think I would also like to see more women bishops, especially as therapists and bishops coming forward, and women leading large churches. So as we mark 30 years of women priests in the Church of England, we celebrate how far we've come and those who've paved the way. But we also lament the pain and discrimination experienced and still occurring. And so we're going to finish with a special prayer for all in ordained ministry. God of the universe, long ago you spoke through an angel to your servant Mary, who opened her entire being in response to your creative word. In the gift of that word, she carried Christ in her womb into the world. Today you are speaking through your Spirit into the hearts of women around the world, inviting them to be Christ-bearers, to serve in the sacramental priesthood of the Church. They have heard you, and like Mary, they hunger to respond with their entire being. Give courage and freedom to them and to all your people, both men and women, to open and embrace the sacred space which will make their priesthood a living reality in today's world, which waits in needs of the gifts they have called to bring to your table.